Hey everyone, welcome to the Revive podcast. My name is Sean Thomas and I'm an associate campus pastor here at Neighborhood Church. Thanks so much for joining us. We're so glad that you're listening today. And Psalm 138 verse 7 reflects, "Though I walk in the midst of trouble, you will revive me." And God does indeed rescue and sustain us. We open each of our podcasts mentioning that verse, and we just really want to reiterate it to you, God, that we look to you people listening to us, that God is the one who revives and sustains us. So thank you so much for being with us. Each week we create curated resources to help you thrive in Christ, and those are all available at neighborhoodchurch.com/revive. And today is actually a special day. We are joined by a few of our head pastors. We have Mike McKay joining us.
How you doing?
And Mike is the lead pastor here at Neighborhood Church. And we also have Justin McElderly rejoining us.
Hey, how are you guys doing?
Good. It's great to have both you guys here joining us today. This past Sunday, it was a great weekend. Actually, Pastor Mike, he gave, we call it the triple header. It was kind of a quadruple header, but we might go into that in a little bit. But Pastor Mike preached at all the services on all our campuses this past weekend, at all of our English-speaking services, I should say. And he was continuing in our new sermon series, which is entitled Unhindered, Engaging the World in a Time of Disengagement. And for those of you who might just be tuning in with us for the first time, basically our sermon series kind of has to do with, in the midst of a pandemic, in the midst of lockdowns, what does it look like to spread the good news of the gospel? Because we look in history, even in the New Testament, Paul, towards the end of the book of Acts, he was under house arrest in Rome, and yet the gospel went forth unhindered. So that is what we are exploring now, as we have kind of our own pseudo house arrest, you might say. And Mike, I wanted to tell you, it was a great service, really engaging. I love your energy. And for those of you who are tuning in, pause this podcast, go and watch a little bit of the service on our YouTube pages. They're great. Also, we're going to be talking about Genesis chapter 12 is kind of where we are. But Mike's energy, it's amazing. And also the thing that stuck out to me, Mike, you had some awesome toys with you and even some tangerines. Can you explain, why did you have those things?
Yeah, I love the whole idea of having visuals. I'm a visual guy. I remember things through visuals. And one of the visuals was this unique, they're called STEM toys. They really help engage kids into putting things together. And the reason I chose that is I wanted to illustrate that, these little pieces on this connect, just like little Legos, they're great on their own. They're kind of cute and fun. You can make a keychain out of them and stuff like that, but they're really designed to connect. And I showed some toys that me and my grandsons had put together, and they were kind of fun. There was a scorpion in a truck or a car thing. And what it is that God created us, just like the creator of this toy created those parts to fit together, and they fit together to do all kinds of creative things. And God's design for us was to actually engage. He wants us to connect, interact, and engage. He wants that whole idea of us working together. And when we do, something creative and fun and wonderful is built. And I like to always look at that as that every time I see a Lego or I see some kind of connecting toys, to think about, well, that's just how people should be. We should be connecting to our neighbors and our family and our people at work. And, we're taught so much to be isolated.
Yeah.
And that really just, in and of itself it just sits there, but yet we were designed. And that's the idea of that one. The tangerines were just hit the topic of today's sermon, blessed to bless. And the idea is that God blesses us, just like a tree full of tangerines, like I have in my backyard. And I brought a bunch to show, and I also brought bags of them to each of the in-person gatherings that I was able to be at. And people came and got them. I even got a text last night. Said, "Mike, your tangerines are awesome." Thank you. But it was just we were blessed with this tree is bending over because it has so many tangerines on it, that I just thought, well, man, why shouldn't I bless other people? So
they were all taken in Los Al.
So, they were. Yeah, okay.
I was
and
a
the
beneficiary.
Limes? Did I give you guys limes?
Everything was taken.
Yeah. Some might say for our podcast listeners, maybe a vocab word of the day. Mike's tangerine tree was quite fecund, actually, if you want to learn a vocab word for the day, but that's for something else. It's funny, Mike, when you were talking, it struck me, isn't it interesting? We think about today, with the lockdowns, we're doing things via Zoom, and oh gosh, we're so disengaged physically. And yet for a number of years leading up to 2020, I had seen studies, I had read reports, I had seen documentaries of how social media, even without a lockdown, was disengaging us. I mean, how interesting that for like 2017, 2018, 2019, we were moving in that disengagement direction anyway. And yet now it takes a pandemic for us to really lament where we're at, and I just love that visual of, it's kind of funny. I had Lincoln Logs. I mean, I'm kind of a younger guy, on our staff, but I played with Lincoln Logs. I mean, my parents, we had to eat.
What are you saying by that? I
I'm
played with Lincoln Logs too.
Oh, I mean, they're the righteous thing, dude.
Yeah.
They're super contemporary, but there's something so satisfying when they slot in properly, and just kind of like what you're saying, like, and even if you can unpack, Mike, how does God make us to slot in an engaging sort of way? Because, like, I don't know, for people listening on the podcast, sometimes I think, gosh, I don't get along with this person, or I don't fit perfectly with this personality type. I don't know. How does God make us slot in?
Engagement takes something of ourselves. It's not, yes, we're designed that way, but we have to put forth the effort. I mean, even in our text for this past Sunday's sermon was Genesis chapter 12, verses 1-3, where God calls Abram, later to be called Abraham, to go and connect with the world around him, and because he was to bless those around him with the way God has blessed him. And that takes an effort, it takes an energy, it takes that, in a sense. Abraham was an immigrant in the world around him. He had to leave family, friends, land, people, all that to go, and he needed to put forth the effort to interact. And I'm sure he even had to probably cross some language barriers, certainly custom barriers, and all those kind of things. And we have to do that today if we want to be interactive and connect with other people. It's going to take some effort on our part to be able to listen more intently, to try to understand meaning, to ask questions, to be a learner of other people's culture, and then figure out how to find some common ground to connect on. Maybe it's our love for, like, I have a smoker grill, which I talk about a lot at Traeger, and it even has an app. I'm pretty excited about the app. I can control it by my phone. But it's my neighbors smell me smoking meat, all throughout the neighborhood. And it's a great way to connect with people, because, I actually share it. There's this one guy that's down the street, and he keeps bringing me bottles of barbecue sauce. And brings a bottle of barbecue sauce. I'm usually cooking something, so maybe he's smelling it. And then I always, pack up a bag for him and go take it over to his house. And that's a way we connect. And I don't know, I think he's living alone, older gentleman, and it's a great opportunity through food. That's a way we connect. And, he blesses me with barbecue sauce. I bless him with some nice smoked ribs, chicken, just did some pulled pork the other day. And I would share, and tangerines are easy to share with my neighbors and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting how, like, I mean, across cultures, even, we talk about America, especially Southern California, as a melting pot culturally, a lot of different people groups, a lot of different cultures, yet things like food and sharing, hospitality, I mean, that's huge. And that crosses cultures and makes an impact on people. And Justin, we were talking earlier about cultures and different things, even in our church. I don't want to cut you off. It sounds like you had something to.
Oh yeah, just to tack onto that, and then I'm going through a discipleship group, leading a discipleship group with, I don't know, there's probably 7 or 8 of us, and we're going through a book, like an ebook called 5 Habits of Highly Missional People, and just trying to live our lives more externally focused. And really, this idea of blessed to be a blessing is one of the first things, the first two habits are bless and eat. So I just think it's pertinent to this. So you bless people, and the challenge is to bless 3 people throughout the week, and by doing an act of kindness, sharing a word of encouragement, and there's one other thing that's slipping my mind at the moment. And then the other thing is you're supposed to eat with 3 people throughout the week, and this was written pre-COVID, so I'm assuming it's not your family, but to bring some, it could be a coworker or whatever, just because so much does happen fellowship wise over food. And so, so I just thought that, that fits nicely, with what Mike was talking about there, of the food and the blessing,
and
how
I think
all that
with
fits
COVID,
together.
I'm sorry, I talk over you, Justin,
No, you're good.
I think with COVID, it has taken a different, we have to be a little more creative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not, some people aren't really comfortable having other people in their home. I mean, the reality is when you live so close to people like we do here, I mean, you're sometimes within 6 feet, though you may be on the other side of a brick wall. I mean, you're a block wall, but it's being able to share. And some other cultures, which I love, are a little more collective, and they're more used to sharing. They're more used to speaking of we instead of I. And I think for those of us who've been kind of grown up in the Western culture where it's more individualistic, it's a little harder for us to step past those opportunities. It takes a little bit more. And also personality, if you're introvert, extrovert, it depends on what kind of hurdles we have to come up. Regardless of those, we do need each other. And I think that, the challenge like that Justin just gave, or that his study was giving, is a good exercise in stretching out and wanting to make that connection.
Yeah,
it's very much about intentionality.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say for the people listening to the podcast, I encourage you guys, as you're listening to this, think of some people around you who you live near, who may be a different culture, or when was the last time you connected with them, or even waved, even something as innocent as a smile these days, like we were saying with COVID, obviously you're not going to be like, here's a sandwich that I just made for you. That might be awkward, but if it's a smile, if it's eye contact is huge, obviously some cultures, eye contact, sometimes it could be like, whoa, why is this person engaging with me? And that could lead into something profound. Yeah. Even as you lean right in. So just encourage you guys listening at home, be mindful, even as our discussion is going on, who are some of the people that that might be a different culture. Even if they look like you, they might have a different culture than you. But speaking of cultures, Justin, I wanted to connect with you. We're going through what's called Missions Month, or Missions Moment, if you will, in our church. And I just wanted to see if you could speak into what is that for our church, and what does that have to do with our engaging series, especially with Mike's sermon, which was called Blessed to be a Blessing?
Yeah, well, we've traditionally done a missions week, either 1 or 2 Sundays, so 7 or 8 days, depending on whether we went 2 Sundays or not. And we've been doing that for years. And we'd have missionaries come in, and it would be a big production and really a great time to connect, but it's not really the season to be flying people in and all that kind of stuff. And so we decided to take it off of 1 week, but to expand throughout the month. And we'll probably go into March, honestly. And we have missionaries. We support somewhere between 15 and 20 missionaries all around the world, from Portugal. We've had some who have been in Africa, Mongolia, China, so all over the world, and doing stuff locally as well, and South Los Angeles and other places nearby too. So really everywhere in between, and it just gives us an opportunity to highlight a different missionary family each week. And we thought, okay, we'll do that in general. How will that fit with our series? And then since we shifted on the series, it fits fantastically, because that's really what we're all called to do, and certainly what missionaries are doing intentionally. And I was telling one of my groups recently, life groups, that, hey, what missionaries are doing, we send them to do over there, wherever there happens to be, what we're all called to do right here. And so, they have a special assignment, but it's to a different location, but we all have the same assignment to engage people and show them Christ's love and help them thrive in Christ. And so it fits very well with this. And one of the passages that I love, I didn't preach on this, so I don't have anything on my cutting room floor to bring to this conversation. But whenever I think of missions and Abraham, how he's blessed to be a blessing, one of my favorite books of all time is Let the Nations Be Glad by John Piper. And that verse comes from Psalm 67. And I love how it ties the fact that we're blessed is our motivation for blessing others and ultimately to the ends of the earth. And so the first couple verses are, may God be gracious to us and bless us and make his face to shine upon us. And that can be a very selfish prayer right there, right? Like, hey, just give me the good stuff, right? But he keeps going, and then there's a purpose clause to it. It says, that your way may be known on earth, your saving power among all nations. Let the people praise you, O God. Let all the peoples praise you. That we are not blessed just to soak in those blessings, but to pass them on. And I think it's another Piper line somewhere, that we're created to be cul-de-sac or conduits of God's blessing, not cul-de-sacs, that they shouldn't end with us, but they're something that flow through us to others. And so those things have always stuck in my mind, and certainly how fit fabulously with a global outreach emphasis. And another plug for another media outlet here, but we, on our Neighborhood Church Cypress YouTube page, we actually have those missionary testimonies, just them sharing with the church. And so those are making it up on a playlist there every week. Once they get done in service, they get released, so you can binge them. You can go all of them at once if you want.
Totally.
So,
Yes.
I'd like to jump on what Justin was just talking about what our missionaries do over there, we're supposed to be doing over here. And I think that we kind of, for some reason, get in this mindset, well, that's for them to do. And they're supposed to take the responsibility of being a blessing, about sharing Christ, doing the good works over there. And our responsibility is to live, and yet the truth is that we are called just like Abraham was called, to go and to bless. In the passage of where Jesus calls us to be salt and light in Matthew 5, in verse 16, he says, in the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good works and give glory to our Father. That we're to actually go, in Ephesians 2:10, we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works. And we are to take that God has blessed us with so much that we are to be able to share those with the other people around us, and to see it as a responsibility. It's not just if I'm well blessed with great tangerines, I should share them with my neighbor. That the truth is that we're to be a blessing. Because we've all been given the greatness of God's love, and we're supposed to share that with those, and to take it as our responsibility. Sean, you were talking about people in your neighborhood. The idea is that we should look at our neighborhood as our responsibility, responsibility to love and to care for those who we live around, and to get to know them and who they are, to be intentional with that. And one of the interesting things is how this story of Abraham is nestled right before a very interesting, crazy story that just kind of makes you kind of go, what? And that's the story of the Tower of Babel, or some call the story of the Tower of Babel. And it's
Babel?
Yeah, it all depends on how you want to pronounce the Hebrew.
I'm a Babel guy. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I like Babel. It just sounds fun. In Genesis chapter 11, God had told people to go be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. And that was his command. And now here he says, the people of the earth kind of say, forget it, God. We're going to do our own thing. And so they directly disobeyed God's mandate to engage the world, to get out there and do that. And they wanted to hunker all together, to be very exclusive. And it's a great story. It just, you kind of makes you go, wow, what's happening here? But it's here are people that were called to go out, but they didn't. They didn't take on the responsibility that God's call to them. And then now in Genesis chapter 12, here's one that's going to take on God's responsibility. And what I love about the story about Abraham, is that there's no balking at it. He just goes.
Yeah.
I mean, he has his issues. He has a struggle with trusting God, and it's made a mess of our world, because it's the problems of that, the Arab-Israeli thing, because, Abraham took this whole thing of him not having an heir into his own hands and didn't wait on God. So but he just went for it. He took the responsibility. He left his securities and he went out and did something, and he took the responsibility. And we should do that. we should take responsibility, look at our neighborhood, look at our people in our workplace, or people in our schools, people that we encounter, and see them as, hey, it's my responsibility to figure out how to be a blessing, how to make life better for other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was, man, really moved and convicted, Mike, when you were given your kind of towards the end of your sermon, you know, it's kind of practical application. You know, you can do this, you can do that, you know, and really thinking through what are the resources that I have, because I think it's, and Justin, to go back what you were saying, you know, where, you know, missionaries are going out, but we can do this locally. You know, it's sometimes I think, you know, I'll just pray them out, you know, and then it's easy for me to just, but now I'm going to go play a game or, you know, do my own thing. But what are the resources that I have, that I know I have, that God has laid on my heart? And I really believe God will tell us, you know, I play music, you know, so how can I go out on a street corner, again, in the midst of COVID, you know, there's not concerts going on, but maybe I can play at a bench, you know, masked up and just bless some people with some music as they walk by from afar, or tangerines or something like that. So,
well, I think there's a certain degree of, sometimes it might be a Herculean effort, but I think a lot of times it's just thinking of other people and doing what we do, you know? So, and obviously now it takes more creativity because of COVID, but in other times it's, I'm a washed up jock who likes watching sports. I could invite my neighbor to watch a game. You know, like it's very, oftentimes can be very simple things that we just live with a little more intentionality. And in that discipleship group, we have accountability. Like, hey, how'd you do in terms of blessing people and eating with people and whatnot this week? And then and my prayer was, you know what, I did it a few times, but I didn't, which that's good that you do things naturally, but I also wasn't as intentional. It wasn't on my mind. And so I wasn't maximizing opportunities, some of which would have been pretty easy. And so I think intentionality is a big key in that regard.
And really taking stock of, like you said, Justin, like I'm a former jock, or this is kind of what I do naturally. And so God has already pre-equipped us to be a blessing.
It's a lot of it is taking and turning our eyes outward. You know, we're all human beings that have a bent towards being self-focused. We're all like that, and unfortunately, this COVID thing has really turned our eyes way inward, and we're not supposed to be thinking about other people. But that's been the problem. We should never stop thinking about other people. I mean, look at all the one another's in Scripture. Love one another, encourage one another, bless one another, you know, greet one another. Maybe hold off the holy kiss right now. But you know, I mean, you know, we're to be there and listen to one another, to bear one another's burdens, all those other things that God is constantly turning our eyes outward and looking at opportunities, and it can be very easy ways. I mean, I think in the sermon I gave three opportunities. One is in a word. Actually, these came from Justin. He shared them from what book was that from, Justin? The Word.
I think the new version is called "Surprise the World."
Right.
I have I'm cheap. I have the old version, but now that it's sold in a little bound book, and I think it's called "Surprise the World."
Yeah, and it gave three opportunities. You know, here share a word. Whether it's through a text or an email or even a handwritten note, or even verbally, just saying a word of appreciation, of thanks, a way of declaration of your love for somebody and your friendship, appreciate them. Those kind of things go way, you know, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've received an encouraging email or note, and it's just blessed me throughout the day. In other words, and another one is through some kind of a gift. You know, it doesn't have to be small things. Our women's ministry went out and handed a bag of love, and inside there was just a fuzzy pair of socks and some chocolate and some other things, and a handmade card. And those
chocolate goes a long way.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just, it could be, hey, I was just thinking about you, and here's a little blessing for that. And they wear that, and they're encouraged by it. So think of being creative. You know, I always like the idea of putting some cash in an envelope and then just have somebody else hand it some, and I tell you, that just goes so deep so many ways. It's just kind of a fun thing to do, you know. Hey, I got, $5, $10, more, whatever, and stuff like that. But it's and then the other one is an act of service, and that's a way of helping somebody, seeing somebody. I saw somebody they were walking into Costco, and there was this person trying to struggle getting the things of water into their trunk, and so that person stopped and helped them in that. It's that kind of act of service. I think those are great practical ways we can bless other people.
Well, and it's funny that you mentioned that, Mike, because I still watch TV. I know for some of you listening on our podcast right now, maybe you don't watch TV anymore, but commercials these days, and they're even on YouTube commercials. There's such an interesting phenomenon on a lot of companies that have that idea of paying it forward, right? I remember a commercial came out recently of someone finding like $5 on the street and then giving it to someone, and that person would give it, and then that person, it was like, I forget, Nike or Budweiser, it was like some company. And it's interesting because the world is yearning for that, and is saying these things that are really biblical foundations, right? And that's good. How much more ought we as Christians even do what you're doing, Mike, with taking that and then exponentially with spiritualize, seeing the needs, whether if it is socks, I hear that's one of the things that a lot of people need in the world randomly, if we could use those spiritual eyes, because $5 here and there, that's great. That's always great, always helpful. But what are those intentional touches that God gives us spiritual eyes to see, to pay it forward? And that pushes us above and beyond what the world is doing, even though the world is recognizing as a good thing to pay it forward in this day and age. But we as Christians, let's do that in droves and in spades.
Yeah.
And Justin, you mentioned something too that I thought was kind of cool as you're evaluating kind of your blessings and what it means to be blessed.
Yeah, I just, folks who are listening from Los Al hear about this often, because I just think gratitude is so critical to, living a joyous and rightly oriented life, that God blesses us in so many ways. So, yeah, I have a little journal, a little moleskin journal that I keep with me, keep in my bag, so I don't have it with me at all times. But I just jot down and it's more of a discipline that I do every few months, where I'll just sit down and I'll write out 10 things I'm grateful for. So let's see, I have it with me here. I have to reach for it, and with my creaky chair, I'm up to 472. So I don't do it as often as I thought. I've had it for a few years. But it's a good thing to do occasionally. And then it's really good to do when I take the extra time to look back on things I've been thankful for. And it just, reminds me that, because we have a tendency to dwell on the negative, or we can, and that gets you out of that headspace, and you realize, okay, if Pastor Mike's telling me I'm blessed to be a blessing, and if I'm not seeing how I'm blessed, then I'm just not going to believe it, and that's going to, limit my how much I'm willing to extend out for others and pay things forward. When I see even just scratch the surface of how blessed I am, then there's always something. There's always some way that I can give of myself to bless others. So
I think that's so,
kind of,
that's essential, man. I think that's a key point. And even for us listening to the podcast at home, evaluate, what is it that I'm blessed in? How am I blessed? How am I thankful? Why am I thankful? And like gratitude begets gratitude, out of the abundance of joy or peace that, that you have in this area as you record it, then out of that, oh gosh, I'm thankful and I'm blessed because of this. Maybe I can share that. Maybe I can do this and X, Y, and Z. For those of you listening, please grab, whether it's a moleskin or on your phone, the notepads. I use that all the time, every day, every other day, every week, every Sunday when you're going to church or after church. Sometimes when I drive home from church after a Sunday, it's like, okay, now church is 7 days away. You're at the farthest points, from church. But maybe take that time to evaluate, why am I blessed? What am I thankful for? And how can I kind of push that forward? Gentlemen, it's wonderful having our podcast with you guys. Thank you so much for spending the time with me today.
No, my pleasure.
It was joy.
Awesome. Well, and thank you guys for listening to the Revive podcast and joining us here. If this was your first episode, let us know. Contact us. Let us know you're listening. Or if you're a member of Neighborhood Church, thanks for listening. It's great to be with you guys, even digitally in the digital world during the week. For those of you who want to learn more about engaging and the content that we discussed today, please check out our neighborhoodchurch.com/revive website. And you can also find us on Facebook and Instagram, or at our Neighborhood Church of Cypress and Neighborhood Church of Los Alamitos YouTube channels. Also, we would love to hear from you, as we've said a few times today. It's great to just hear how you're being revived, as we get to share how we are being revived. So please subscribe to this podcast. Again, it's Neighborhood Church Podcast. It's on iTunes or wherever you find your podcasts. And if you have any questions about the content that we discussed today, about engaging, what that means, even in the time of pandemic and lockdowns like we're talking about, please write us. Our email address is connect@neighborhoodchurch.com. Again, connect, CONNECT, @neighborhoodchurch.com. And we hope to see you guys next time. Until then, we pray that God revives your soul. Have a good day.